January 3, 2024, News Report 1, Director of the Publishing Bureau of the Central Propaganda Department, Feng Shixin, removed from office due to gaming regulations controversy. On January 3, 2024, in the first news report, it was announced that Feng Shixin, the director of the Publishing Bureau of the Central Propaganda Department, was removed from office, causing a market value evaporation of 500 billion due to the controversy surrounding the newly issued gaming regulations by the National Press and Publication Administration. Feng Shixin had been representing the Central Propaganda Department in various events over the past few years. Worth noting is Feng Shixin's statement in December 2020 during the China Game Industry Annual Conference, where he mentioned the completion of a nationwide real name verification system. However, the recently issued gaming regulations imposed restrictions on player spending, prohibiting incentivizing rewards such as daily logins and consecutive recharges. This led to strong public reactions and significant stock price drops for gaming companies, with Tencent falling 16% and NetEase plummeting by 28%. The National Press and Publication Administration, a state-level institution under the State Council, renamed as the National Radio and Television Administration during the State Council's restructuring in March 2018, saw part of its functions transferred to the Central Propaganda Department, where Feng Shixin bore responsibility for the impact of the gaming regulations. News Report 2, former director of China Geological Survey Bureau, Zhong Ziren, under investigation for serious violations. On January 2, 2024, the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection of China announced that Zhong Ziren, the former director of the China Geological Survey Bureau, is under investigation for serious violations. Zhong Ziren, a geological expert, previously served as the director of the Geological Survey Department of the Ministry of Land and Resources and became the director of the China Geological Survey Bureau in 2014. His investigation has attracted widespread attention due to the relatively rare occurrence of high-ranking officials within the land and resources system being investigated. News Report 3, Israeli Defense Minister announces ongoing large-scale operations in Gaza. On January 2, 2024, the Israeli Defense Forces engaged in intense fighting with Hamas militants in the central southern part of Gaza. Defense Minister Gallant inspected the central forces in Gaza and announced the continuation of large-scale operations in the northern part of Gaza, focusing on eliminating remaining Hamas militants. Meanwhile, Hamas claimed that Israel carried out a drone strike on its office in Beirut, Lebanon, resulting in the death of senior Hamas figure al-Arauri. Additionally, the Israeli government spokesperson stated that Israel would appear in the International Court of Justice to respond to accusations of genocide raised by South Africa. South Africa had requested an urgent order from the International Court of Justice on December 20, accusing Israel of violating international conventions in suppressing Hamas, alleging genocide. The Israeli government spokesperson criticized South Africa's support for Palestine, comparing it to South Africa's apartheid era, suggesting the failure of Israeli intelligence efforts. News Report 4, Harvard University President Claudine Gay resigns over anti-Semitic remarks. On January 2, 2024, Harvard University President Claudine Gay announced her resignation, becoming the shortest-serving president in Harvard's history. Gay, a political science professor, had become Harvard's first African-American president in July of the previous year. Her remarks during a congressional hearing on campus anti-Semitism sparked controversy, leading to her resignation. During the hearing on December 5, Gay, along with the presidents of the University of Pennsylvania and MIT, declined to directly answer whether anti-Semitic remarks violated the school's rules, citing the need to balance free speech. Subsequently, over 70 members of Congress called for the removal of the three university presidents. While the president of the University of Pennsylvania resigned immediately after the hearing, Gay initially did not. However, her recent video statement suggesting that advocating for the genocide of Jews on campus might not violate Harvard's rules led to her resignation. Opinions on Harvard's support for Gay's initial decision not to resign vary, with some seeing it as a commitment to the university's principles of independent education, while others question whether a leader who cannot uphold basic moral principles is fit for the presidency. News Report 5: U.S. diplomacy becomes top priority in 2024, according to latest polls. In the fifth news report, a joint poll by the Associated Press and the National Opinion Center at the University of Chicago reveals that 38% of Americans believe that diplomacy should be the top priority for the U.S. government in 2024, marking a 19-point increase from previous data. This heightened interest in international affairs is considered a wise stance given the significant uncertainties in the global situation in 2024. With rising tensions in Ukraine and the Middle East, there is concern that China might take advantage of the distraction to make a move on Taiwan, potentially igniting a global conflict. Apart from foreign policy, other priorities identified by Americans for the government in 2024 include immigration, 35%, inflation, 30%, economic issues, 24%, education, 22%, and climate/environmental issues, 22%. Additionally, 19% of Americans think this year is better than the previous, 51% believe it is similar, and 29% expect it to be worse. The poll, conducted from November 30 to December 4, 2023, surveyed 1,074 American adults with a margin of error of plus or minus 4 percentage points. News Report 6: Market movements and downgrades impact tech stocks. In the sixth news report, the Nasdaq index dropped 245 points during trading, closing at 4,742 points, down 27 points. Barclays announced a downgrade of Apple's rating from synchronized with the broader market to underweight. This move led to a 4.5% intraday decline in Apple's stock, closing at $185, a 3.5% drop. Barclays attributed the downgrade to weak iPhone sales and sluggish demand for Macs, iPads, and wearables. In the semiconductor sector, ARM dropped 8%, Intel fell 5%, and Nvidia declined by 3%. Tesla announced the delivery of 484,000 electric vehicles in the fourth quarter of the previous year, slightly surpassing market expectations. However, Tesla's stock price initially dropped by 1.6%, recovering during intraday trading and ultimately closing at $248, down 0.1%. Investors anticipated a possible interest rate cut by the Federal Reserve this year, leading to a rise in the yield of the 10-year U.S. Treasury bond to 5%, reaching a new high in 2 weeks. This development raised concerns in the market about the economic outlook. News Report 7: U.S. Treasury adjusts electric vehicle subsidy policy. Starting January 1, the U.S. Treasury adjusted its electric vehicle subsidy policy. According to the new regulations, electric vehicles must have more than 50% of their battery components manufactured or assembled in North America to qualify for the $7,500 subsidy per vehicle. Vehicles using batteries manufactured or assembled in China will lose eligibility for the subsidy. Additionally, starting from 2025, electric vehicles using key minerals, such as nickel and lithium, mined and processed in China, will no longer qualify for the subsidy. Under the new policy, the number of electric vehicle models eligible for subsidies in the United States has decreased from 20 to 13. According to reports, BYD's electric vehicle sales exceeded Tesla's in the fourth quarter of the previous year, making it the world's top-selling electric vehicle manufacturer. Tesla announced the sale of 484,000 electric vehicles in the fourth quarter, while BYD disclosed sales of 526,000 electric vehicles in the same period. Despite BYD surpassing Tesla in annual production volume, Tesla, with a global delivery of 1.81 million electric vehicles, a 38% year-on-year increase, maintains its lead over BYD. News Report 8: Follow-up on the collision between Japan Coast Guard plane and JAL aircraft. Following the collision between a fixed-wing aircraft from the Japan Coast Guard and a Japan Airlines passenger plane at Haneda Airport, the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism released transcripts of communication before the incident. The control tower instructed the JAL aircraft to enter the runway for landing, while the Coast Guard aircraft was directed to wait before entering the runway. The collision resulted in severe damage to both aircraft, triggering investigations by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police and Airbus. News Report 9, Bloomberg releases 2023 Global Top 500 Billionaires list. On January 2, Bloomberg released its list of the top 500 billionaires globally for the year 2023. Tesla CEO Elon Musk topped the list with a wealth of $229 billion, a $92 billion increase from the previous year, primarily due to the rise in Tesla's stock price. Bernard Arnault, chairman of LVMH Group, followed with $179 billion, and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos ranked third with $177 billion. With a significant surge in the U.S. stock market last year, 77% of the wealth among the top 500 billionaires increased, totaling $1.5 trillion. Among the top 500 billionaires, the United States accounted for 189, India 23, Germany 20, the UK 17, and France 13. News Report 10, Escalation of Red Sea tensions affects shipping routes. On January 2, the UK government received reports of a missile attack on merchant ships sailing in the Strait of Mandeb. Although the ships were not damaged, explosions occurred in the vicinity. The U.S. Central Command identified Houthi forces as responsible for launching 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles into the Red Sea. The Strait of Mandeb is a crucial passage connecting the southern Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden, serving as a vital route for ships transiting the Suez Canal. Following the incident, Denmark's Maersk Line announced the suspension of its ships passing through the Red Sea, choosing to detour around the Cape of Good Hope. Germany's shipping company Hapag-Lloyd also declared its intention to continue circumnavigating the Cape of Good Hope, while China COSCO Shipping has ceased accepting bookings for routes passing through the Red Sea. These decisions have resulted in a 51% increase in transit time for grain shipments from the Black Sea to the Far East and a 77% increase for coal shipments from the U.S. East Coast to the Far East. Consequently, shipping costs have surged. As a result, the January 3 container freight index for the Europe route saw a significant increase of 22%. Maersk Line announced that container freight rates from Asia to the Mediterranean would double starting from January 15. The China to Northern Europe route increased by 1.62 times, and the China to U.S. East Coast route rose by 1.27 times. Shipping agencies reported empty sailings on routes from China to Europe and the Middle East, leading to the anticipation of container shortages in China by late January, with significant implications for global trade. News Report 11, Sweden expected to join NATO in July, Turkey's approval critical. NATO Secretary-General Stoltenberg recently announced that Sweden is expected to officially join NATO by July, becoming the alliance's 32nd member. Earlier, both Sweden and Finland abandoned their neutral stance after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Finland joined NATO in April of the previous year. Sweden officially applied to join NATO in May and faced difficulties due to Turkey's opposition. Turkey rejected Sweden's accession, citing Sweden's allowance of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, to operate within its borders. However, Sweden eventually made concessions and fulfilled its commitments to Turkey. With the support of the United States, Turkey has agreed to a vote on Sweden's accession to NATO. The vote is scheduled to take place on January 5, and if successful, Sweden will officially become a NATO member before the next NATO summit on July 9. This development holds significant geopolitical implications for NATO and the European region. News Report 12 10 days until Taiwan election, focus on Guo Taiming. As of January 3, there are only 10 days left until the Taiwan presidential election. Kuomintang, KMT, vice presidential candidate Zhao Xiaokong has called on Terry Gou, the founder of Han High Precision Industry Company, Limited, Foxconn, to support the KMT. Zhao revealed that he had previously attempted to contact Gou but was unsuccessful. He stated that all communication with Gou has been cut off and urged Gou to return to the KMT, emphasizing the need for his support. Since Terry Gou announced his withdrawal from the presidential race on November 24, he has remained out of the public eye. The KMT hopes that Gou will emerge in the final stages of the campaign to support the party. Zhao Xiaokong believes that Gou has no other concerns at this time and should give the KMT some face. However, Gou has maintained a low profile, and it is unclear whether he will make a public appearance before the election. In other candidates' activities, Hou Yuyi and Lai Ching-te conducted campaign rallies on January 3. Hou emphasized the need to consolidate votes for the KMT, proposing the idea of abandoning the third-party candidacy in support of the KMT's Hao Pei-sun. Lai Ching-te, on the other hand, campaigned in Keelung, stating that Taiwan cannot continue down the old path of the 1992 consensus and calling for the preservation of sovereignty. Meanwhile, Ko Wen-jae continued his campaign in night markets, taking photos with supporters in the Zhongli night market on the night of January 3. Additionally, on January 3, Zhang Zhijun, chairman of the Association for Relations Across the Taiwan Straits, ARATS, delivered a New Year's message, emphasizing that the Taiwan presidential election is a critical choice between peace and war, prosperity and decline. He hinted that the Communist Party would assist the Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, at the appropriate time. This statement was interpreted as a threat to Taiwanese voters, suggesting that choosing the KMT could lead to consequences, possibly hinting at military action. The Taiwan presidential election is approaching a critical stage, with various political forces vying for voter support and tensions escalating. News Report 13. China's third aircraft carrier, Fujian, exposed, preparing for sea trials. China's third aircraft carrier, known as the Fujian, was unveiled on January 2 in a broadcast on CCTV's Xinwen Lianhua. The exposed footage showed the flight deck of the Fujian, with 3 electromagnetic catapult tracks fully laid, encapsulated, and marked with identification lines. The deck also featured rain shelters, and the electromagnetic catapult and ammunition elevators were installed. In the angled deck's landing area, 4 arresting cables were installed. However, the displayed carrier-based aircraft J-15 parked on the flight deck was a full-sized model, not an actual aircraft. Scaffolding on the island of the Fujian indicated that some equipment installations were still in progress. This is likely part of the final phase of work, and once completed, the Fujian will enter the sea trial phase. Simultaneously, China's Maritime Safety Administration announced that live-fire exercises would be conducted in the waters of the Bibu Gulf from 8 a.m. on January 3 to noon on January 5, prohibiting entry of vessels. The Bibu Gulf is located north of Hainan Island, near the China-Vietnam border. China conducted 3 live-fire exercises in this area last December. The choice of the Bibu Gulf for exercises again has attracted attention, with some analysts suggesting a possible connection to Xi Jinping's recent visit to Vietnam. The exposure of the Fujian and the exercise plan have drawn international attention, further highlighting China's continuous efforts in naval strength and aircraft carrier development. News Report 14. Beijing Bus Company recruits bus security guards, monthly salary 5,500 yuan, exclusive to males and no return home for the new year. Beijing's bus company recently started recruiting bus security guards, offering a high monthly salary of 5,500 yuan, including meals, accommodation, uniform allowances, and bonuses. However, this position exclusively hires males aged between 18 and 55, with a requirement that they cannot return home for the Chinese New Year. Citizens reported that every bus is now equipped with 2 security guards who conduct public awareness campaigns, reminding passengers not to carry flammable or explosive materials. Some citizens noted that this well-paying security guard position might be suitable for university students, given the high salary, free meals and accommodation, and saved transportation costs. However, comments pointed out that the main responsibility of bus security guards is not to catch thieves or inspect flammable items but rather to prevent unforeseen incidents. In addition, villagers in the suburbs of Beijing mentioned that there are now checkpoints at the entrances of villages, requiring registration for outsiders, and police presence at intersections. Some comments suggest that these measures reflect the Chinese government's concerns about social stability, particularly during economic downturns and hardships for the general population. Some people draw parallels between these measures and the era of the Cultural Revolution, claiming that the Communist Party is becoming increasingly afraid of the public's voice. News Report 15, Renminbi exchange rate declines, offshore renminbi hits recent low. In terms of the renminbi exchange rate, on January 3, the renminbi traded at 7.1537 during the session, closing at 7.1435, a decrease of 114 basis points. The offshore renminbi touched 7.1597 during the Asian session, while the People's Bank of China set the daily reference rate at 7.1002, a 232 basis point drop, reaching a one-week low. Meanwhile, the US dollar index reached 102.42 on January 3, a 1.6 increase from December 28. Analysts attribute the renminbi's decline to the rise in the US dollar index. Market expectations anticipate increasing demand during the holiday season before the Chinese New Year, but the large interest rate differential between China and the US weakens the seasonal support for the renminbi. The People's Bank of China has not intervened significantly in this process, suggesting a more conservative approach recently. News Report 16, Turmoil in the South China Sea, U.S. and Philippines conduct joint naval patrols again. The Philippine military announced that, starting from January 3, the Philippines and the United States will conduct a two-day joint naval patrol in the South China Sea. The patrol will involve the U.S. Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group, including a cruiser and 2 destroyers. The Philippines will deploy 4 cruisers, 2 destroyers, and 2 military helicopters. This marks the second joint patrol between the U.S. and the Philippines in the South China Sea, with the previous one taking place in November for 3 days. Brigadier General Browner, Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, stated that this joint patrol signifies a significant leap forward in the U.S.-Philippines alliance. It aims to convey to the world that, in the face of regional challenges, the U.S. and the Philippines are committed to maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific region. Previously, China issued warnings, stating that Sino-Philippine relations were facing serious difficulties, attributing the root cause to the Philippines' collusion with the U.S. During diplomatic talks, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi warned the Philippines that if they continued colluding with external forces like the U.S. to create incidents in the South China Sea, China would defend its rights according to law and respond resolutely. Additionally, the joint U.S.-Philippines patrol suggests that the U.S. has withdrawn from the East Mediterranean without deploying an aircraft carrier nearby, interpreted as a potential easing of tensions in the vicinity of the Mediterranean. News Report 17, U.S. public debt exceeds $34 trillion for the first time. A report released by the U.S. Department of the Treasury on January 2 revealed that the total U.S. public debt surpassed $34 trillion for the first time. Previously, in September of the previous year, U.S. public debt had already exceeded $33 trillion. The rapid growth of debt is mainly attributed to a decrease in tax revenue and an increase in federal spending, resulting in an expanding deficit. Against this backdrop, several U.S. government agencies will face the deadline for a temporary budget on January 19. At that time, U.S. Congress members will return to Washington to discuss government spending issues. This data highlights the challenges the U.S. faces in fiscal matters, with the continuously growing debt raising concerns about fiscal sustainability and deficit expansion. government agencies will need to find balanced measures to address the expanding fiscal deficit. News Report 18, South Korea's birth rate hits historic low. Data released by South Korea's Ministry of Interior and Safety on January 3 revealed that the country's birth rate hit a historic low last year, with only 235,000 births, an 8% YoY decrease. Of these, 120,000 were male infants, and 110,000 were female infants. As of the end of last year, South Korea's total population was 51.32 million, decreasing by 113,700 YoY. In 2020, the population had reached its peak at 51.84 million. However, since then, deaths have exceeded births each year, leading to a gradual decrease in population. It is estimated that in the next 50 years, South Korea's population could drop to 36 million, with half of it being people aged 65 and above, pushing the country into a super-aged society. South Korea's aging problem is rapidly intensifying, surpassing that of Japan. Although Japan is currently the most severely aging country in Asia, South Korea is catching up at a faster pace. This indicates that South Korea may experience serious challenges associated with an aging society similar to those in Japan and China. News Report 19, Missouri restricts land purchase by foreign companies. On January 2, the governor of Missouri signed an executive order prohibiting companies or entities from China and Russia from purchasing land within 10 miles of military bases in Missouri. This decision aims to restrict foreign companies' ownership of land in sensitive areas of the state. According to the Missouri Department of Agriculture, as of 2021, foreign companies already owned 404 square kilometers of land in Missouri. Among them, a Chinese company possessed 172 square kilometers of land, having acquired Smithfield Foods in 2013, a company renowned for producing ham sausages. Officials stated that currently, Chinese companies do not own land within 10 miles of military bases. The issuance of this executive order is intended to prevent potential risks. This move is part of similar executive orders issued by several states in the U.S., aiming to limit foreign companies' ownership of land around critical infrastructure and military bases. As of now, 24 states in the U.S. have introduced regulations prohibiting foreign companies from purchasing land, with slight variations in specific provisions. News Report 20, Trial of Jimmy Lai's Case, Prosecution Presents So-Called Evidence. On January 3, 2023, the West Kowloon Court in Hong Kong continued the trial of Jimmy Lai, the founder of Apple Daily, on charges of colluding with foreign forces. The prosecution presented Apple Daily's reports in court as supposed evidence. These reports involved the Yuen Long 721 incident, protest gatherings, and attacks on the police. The court considered these reports to contain hate speech against China and the Hong Kong government, potentially encouraging more citizens to take to the streets in protest. The prosecution played a video in court of Jimmy Lai being interviewed, where he expressed hope for the United States to support Taiwan and jointly sanction China's technology sector. Lai stated that Hong Kong people cannot freely march, and the legislature will lose the voice of interaction, feeling like living in suffocation, emphasizing the importance of the international community's voice for Hong Kong. The prosecution also presented Jimmy Lai's Twitter posts as evidence, attempting to prove his alleged collusion with foreign forces. Lai's defense team questioned these pieces of evidence, claiming they were baseless accusations. The trial is ongoing.